Williams, founder of CamAnaiStrings.org.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Cameren. I'm an 18-year-old first-year viola student at Juilliard, CEO and founder of CamAnaiStrings, and one of 3 co-authors of the book KinderLute, the idea that I will be pitching to you all today. So as someone who has gone through the public school system with siblings that currently go through that system, and someone who works often with students aged 5 to 11, I've noticed that string instructors in elementary schools often just give their students instruments and expect them not to damage them, and of course we all know that's never the case. So I thought of a solution to this problem. Originally I thought, well, maybe I could go and give some sort of interactional lesson to students, but then I started school in New York as a performance major, and this just didn't allow much time, so I came up with another idea, KinderLute. KinderLute is a children's book that follows the story of 4 stringed instruments who are very apprehensive about going to their new owners because their previous owners didn't take very good care of them. So, and by the end of the book, they're very happy because their new owners now know how to take care of them, and they can now focus on making music together. So I believe KinderLute would be a great book to implement into public school systems. One, because it can be used as a tool for teachers to introduce the idea of taking care of these very delicate instruments in a way that students this age would be able to comprehend. And 2, I think it could also be used at home for parents who may not be well versed in string instruments, to also learn with their kids how to take care of these instruments. And I think this would ultimately allow for more time to play and practice, which is what kids want to do with their instruments. So the idea for the book came from my foundation, CamAnaiStrings, which was started in 2014. So a little bit about myself and the foundation. I started violin when I was 5 and switched to viola when I was 12. And in the time that I've played viola, I've had some amazing opportunities, like my solo debut at Carnegie Hall when I was 13, pictured on the screen. And at all these different events, I've heard the same thing. I sound great, but I need a new instrument. So I started looking for one, and I found one that was incredible, and I loved it. And I told my mom, but she said we had to send it back because we didn't have the money to pay for it. And about a week later, I was called into the family room to open a case on the couch, and it was that viola that I tried a week earlier with a sign in the case that said, "You are now the proud owner of this viola." And this was all thanks to my grandmother. She saw how much I loved the instrument and decided to buy it for me. And this made me realize that there are probably so many talented musicians out there that probably just lack the proper equipment to be able to move on to the next level. So from there was born CamAnaiStrings. Now the mission of CamAnaiStrings is to provide string instruments to students who otherwise wouldn't be able to afford their own. And I accomplished this by repairing donated instruments and putting them back out into the community. Here are just some of the things I've dealt with since I've started the foundation, and this was also the process of when I started to think of KinderLute. And also repairing string instruments has gotten me interested in the process of becoming a luthier, which is someone who makes string instruments. So from the work I've done in the foundation, I have come up with the idea KinderLute, who was co-authored by my sister Musiq, who is 10 and plays cello, and my brother EJ, who's 6 and plays the violin. And the book has been written and illustrated, and I think just with this grant from SphinxTank, I'd be able to further the process into getting the book out there into the hands of school districts, public schools, students, their parents, and I think this would ultimately allow for more time for kids to play, and I think the book very comprehensible and it's very fun. My brother reads it all the time, and he's sick, so he just started reading a few years ago, so he just runs around the house reading it. And so that is my idea, KinderLute.
Thank you so much. And now we'll get into questions.
Well, Cameren, congratulations on your project. It's very impressive, and we got to see some of the materials that you worked on, and you did a good job putting together a budget. Do you see how the budget is going to work in year 2, and year 3, and year 4, and year 5? Will it be the same amount that you'll need to raise every year?
I imagine that the budget might increase. I'm hoping, I see the book being very popular. In its initial stages, we'll go through some trial stages with different school programs and different individual students in the community to see how it works, and then hopefully from there it'll grow, and then from that the budget will also grow from more materials.
You have an extraordinary personal story, and that's never should be discounted in terms of a creative entrepreneur. A strong personal story goes very, very far. But I was wondering, to build off of just what Jane mentioned with the budget, can you share with us more specifics or details about how you would market this? So let's say you have the funds, you can have the actual books, because in your budget there was even, I think you noted website marketing and advertising TBD. And so can you expound on that and why you chose to put that, or what your plans are for how you'll engage schools or the other places to engage in it, because it seems phenomenal.
So initially I put to be determined because it was very much in its beginning stages. The book had not been written yet. It was literally an idea, and we were just coming up with the storyline. And so now that we have the book, I have actually talked to a few of the schools and programs in my community and partnered with one of them to, once we get the book printed, to have them test it out in their school and in the program, see how the kids respond to it, and see how the damages are before we introduce the book and how it is after, and compare that and see how it is. And then from there, we imagine that just initially from that program, they spread the word, but then on social media, there's a link to the book and the proposal on my website for CamAnaiStrings for the foundation, and from there people can look into it. And also there's the page on Facebook, and then we also have an Instagram, so promoting it through there as well.
So I'm a little curious about the creative team here. It's you, your younger brother, your younger sister. How did you resolve your creative differences on this one?
Well, we all have very different personalities. I'm much more laid back. My sister is she's very sassy. My brother, he's very aggressive. But I'm the oldest, so most of what I say goes, but I allow them to have their ideas. But honestly, we get along very well, so it wasn't too big of a catastrophe at home going through the
I ask this with some seriousness because if you are successful, have you even talked about, well, this is the first project that we can do together. We've established that we can create something. We've got a product. Can you turn it into another book? Is it a different instrument? Is it, extending the story? Is this part one of a trilogy? Can you see this growing and building beyond more than just the book?
Yes, that is the plan, to start off with the string instruments for KinderLute, and then hopefully for later books we can do like Kinder Brass, Kinder Percussion, Kinder Woodwinds, and like I mentioned before, my brother and my sister and I were all string instrumentalists. But my mom, she plays everything. She's winds and brass, so she can also teach us about that, and we have some resources within our community to also gain that sort of information for the other books.
Congratulations.
So Cameren, I was just as interested in the foundation you started when you were 14 years old as I am in the book. I was wondering, you know, when you sought to seek partnership and funding and build something big to change the world, why did you decide to go the book route instead of building your foundation, right, and sort of delivering instruments to more kids? Do you think the book gives you the ability to make more change in the world? I mean, I'd just be curious to know why that's the priority.
I think when we first started the idea for the book, I was in my senior year of high school, so I was going through applications and auditions, and so my original idea was to make it like put more of a face to my project. But then as I realized I was traveling a lot, there was just no time for no real like effort time to put into that sort of dedication to the project. So that's why I started with the book, and then from here I hope that it grows and then I can do more of that, or even my siblings can do more of that.
Do you think the book leads more kids to music than, let's say, giving instruments in school systems?
I wouldn't say necessarily gives more, but maybe an addition to it.
Okay, thank you.
I want to jump in with a personal question, if you don't mind. I'm really in awe, as I think everyone has said, of your personal story, and particularly the impetus that you had at 14 years of age to start a foundation and to already be so civically minded and engaged. I'm curious how you balance this project and the foundation and this desire to push the book forward, particularly if you could speak to your plans for marketing and branching it out so that the book can get as much exposure as possible, while you are a freshman at Juilliard, did you say?
Yes.
So those are two kind of almost full-time things.
Yes.
How do you plan to balance that? And if you might be able to speak to the sustainability of where you might see that in 3 to 5 years.
Yes. So yes, I am a full-time student at Juilliard, but everything that I do, none of it would be possible without my family. I think that's a very important fact for me to state. None of this is done solely by myself. And so the board for CamAnaiStrings is all made up of my family members, and that all includes paralegals, publishers, attorneys, musicians, my mom and dad. I get a lot of help from them, so I'm definitely not in this alone. As far as sustainability, whenever I have an idea or I want to expand on something that I've already done, I can just call up my family members, since they are a part of the board, and I say, hey, I have this idea, what do you think I should do about this? You know, in school I have performances all the time, but I really want to get the ball rolling on this, so we need to sort of lay out some sort of plan. And so that's the idea that I do whenever I have a new project. We sort of lay out a plan, lay out a timeline, and say, okay, we need to get this done by here, and this done by here, and that's usually how it goes.
Tell us a little bit about the process, or what you put, the process of creating the book. Did you just put in the book, what's the content like? Did you put in the book what you do when you play? And what did you discover from your brother and your sister when they read the book that helped you make the book even better?
Well, I can actually. So, the focus of the book wasn't necessarily me and what I do. I wanted to really focus on what you shouldn't be doing with the instrument. So there's stuff like, don't pluck the strings too hard, don't turn the pegs when your teacher hasn't taught you how to turn the pegs, wipe down your instrument. It's just very basic things that you should be doing when you first get your instrument. Because obviously when these children get the instruments, they don't understand the value of it and how delicate they are. So I really just wanted it to be very basics about that. And working with my brother and sister, they're both young and they started very young. So a lot of this also came from their experiences, as having musicians all around them didn't do anything with them learning how to take care of an instrument. They went through all this same stuff too. So they, the process of writing it, they were like, oh, I remember you telling me to do this so many years ago. And my brother just started, so he'd say like, oh, I remember you telling me this a few months ago. So that's how the process of the book kind of went along.
Cameren, one last question. How are you going to get this into lots of public schools around the country, right? Dealing with boards of education and regions and curricular committees and textbook companies. What are you going to do to make everyone in the country see this book?
Well, I am hoping to publish it on Amazon and have ebooks available everywhere. So initially I want to start small and get it in my home school district, Palm Beach County School District, and hopefully get it out through there because I have a lot of connections through public schools in that system. And then from there, hopefully it will grow to state, surrounding states, and then country from there.
Great. Well, unfortunately, our time is up. Thank you so much, Cameren. And first and foremost, can we just get another round of applause? Truly extraordinary. And you may or may not have noticed, Afa's remarks probably lasted longer than otherwise anticipated because we took longer than we anticipated we would need to take because it was a very, very difficult decision. Very difficult. Because they're just extraordinary. And I'm so excited, especially about our network partners, because I have absolutely no doubt everyone on the panel is in complete agreement that all of you will continue to build these initiatives into successful programs. So really just very much kudos to you, and the entire panel looks forward to being supportive for all of you in the work that you are doing. So our first award will go to the, if you will be able to present it, our Audience Choice Award. And our Audience Choice Award for the inaugural SphinxTank is Cameren Williams. SphinxTank, and along with a grant of $10,000 is Elena Uriosi and Melissa White for Congratulations again to all of our candidates. Many, many thanks to our incredible panel for your wisdom, your experience, your generosity of time. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much to our fearless leader. Thank you all for coming.